All right, everybody. Dynasty Mirror Search for Uhuru. We are back live with the good brother from Ghana, Awini Baba. And what we're discussing this evening is there an African standard? Because I would say the stereotype is that pretty much anything and everything goes in Africa, and that there's not a, I would say, code of conduct. Or let me rephrase that. There's not a standard or a code of conduct in which foreigners act um, when they come to Africa. So pretty much the idea is foreigners come to Africa and just do whatever they want. So we're going to address that with the brother Awini Baba today. Awini, nice to have you back on.
Yeah, yeah, my pleasure. And yeah, good evening to everybody. Of course, depending on which part of the world you are. Yeah, this is a very sensitive topic, actually, because, we are being stereotyped, in the world, and we are being made to look like a group of people who don't really have any self-respect, because when you demand a certain standard, it means you have respect for yourself, and so you would not compromise on your position with
Mhm.
virtually everything that touches your life. And the moment you begin to compromise, then it means you think less of yourself. See, there are situations where we could compromise to survive. But this attitude of anything goes has dragged on for too long. Uh, uh, but I would like to start from the beginning by saying that Africa did set the standard before any other civilization emerged in the world.
Mhm.
This is a fact. This is a fact. And this is why, last time you asked me, what can we really do, to awaken our minds and get going. And the only thing that, as Professor Clark calls it, the respectful commentary of history. Everybody in the world tells a story to make them feel good about themselves. This is necessary to build a psyche that propagates good things and propagates future better development. Nobody can develop if they accept the fact that they are nothing. You only accept the fact that you do not meet a certain, level or standard that you want to meet, or that you have not reached where you want to reach, but it doesn't mean that that is your position. This is very dangerous now. So imagine if we set the standard, and on the back of that, let me branch in. On the back of that, we are being called third world. I refuse to be called third world. I'm a member of the first world because I started the world. I started civilization. I'm not going to buy into somebody else's narrative that defines me as a third world. You see, because you got all of these names. You call them, and they rub on you. They rub on you, and they affect your psyche. You see, so that is a thing that we need to keep in mind. That first and foremost, as far as standards or levels of performance, levels of organization, you know, cultural societies with moral compasses, you know, and schools and writing systems and organized society. We started that. and I challenge anybody in the world to prove me wrong that Africans did not set the ball rolling with standards. That's where the standards started, with standards of life that we had made, began to make improvements in our daily lives, and this would later on affect the entire world. See, so don't allow anybody to tell you that you're a member of the third world, or
Mm,
you know that that's what do you call it, a narrative that is meant to keep some of us down for an
hmm.
eternity. Because if you accept that word, it means that you are implying that you do not, you're not equitable, and you're not like everybody else, again is a game. Because if you get the training that other people in the supposed first world are getting, you perform the same. So there's nothing innately wrong with you, as in you meaning an African, uh, uh, to make you believe that there is something in your genes that makes you inferior to everybody else. And that's why uh, I check myself, and I seldom use the word uh, uh, white supremacy. I don't believe in that. Are you hearing
Go
me?
ahead. Expand on that. If you can expand on that.
Yeah. If you When you say white supremacy, you imply black inferiority.
Mm,
That's all it is. Because you are saying that certain people are promoting the idea that they are superior to you, and you do their work for them by propagating that word beyond where it would have reached without you. So the more we hammer on this thing of white supremacy, there's nothing like that in the world. The Chinese never said white supremacy. The Japanese, when they came in contact with Europeans, they never said anything like this. You see, you, words. There's one thing people need to get. Human beings can be programmed with words. Words affect behavior, and the battle that Africa is fighting right now, very little of it has to do with physical war. It's a mind war.
hmm.
It's a mind war going on. So we have to watch carefully the ideas or rhetoric we espouse
Mm,
and propagate, because they are negative. And
mm.
nobody that propagates that negativity is going to go far in life, you see, because you always end up being trapped because you endorse a certain idea that is promoted by someone not from your community. That's a fact. And
Mm.
so, if we set the standard, and nobody can deny this, some people are trying desperately. I read some books, and initially people were saying, the Egyptians or the Kemetic people were they were white Europe. What do you call them? They were not European, but they were white
Arabs or
Africans, something of that.
Turkish or, but go ahead.
What?
They were Arabs,
Yeah. So
or well, I don't think Arabs were really even around back.
yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of movement in the world,
Right.
you know, but I'm just trying to say that initially blatant lies were being told about Kemet, and Africa, uh, or Africans in the sub-Sahara, were encouraged not to associate with Kemet. But I challenge anybody to find out who was Bess. Bess goes way down into the people we are calling pygmies, which is a wrong word, like the Twa.
Right.
And Bess is a big deity in Kemet, in Kemet mythology, but best comes from inner Africa. It belonged with the small people from
Mm.
back then. That is one of their supreme deities. You see, and he's always shown with the cross. You know, and you find all of this, the linkages. So until our leaders, I wouldn't even say intellectuals, such as Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop,
Mm.
brought about the UNESCO conference. You know, this is why it's very important to know your history, because until that UNESCO conference on the peopling of ancient Egypt, there's a book on this, the peopling of ancient Egypt and the deciphering of the Meroitic script. Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop and Dr. Theophile Obenga, both Africans, Sheikh Anta Diop from Senegal, Theophile Obenga from Congo,
Mm-hmm.
they went in and had a symposium, which is more or less a debate, because they went in there and they debunked all of these myths that were being told about Kemet not having anything to do with Africa. And nobody can deny that now as a result of their work. They had cultural resemblances, they had linguistic resemblances, you know, they had historical accounts from the Greeks. And I understand Sheikh Anta Diop was even going to go as far as to perform what is called the melanin dosage test. And from what I heard, he was prevented from doing that by the Arabs in Egypt.
Mm.
You see, just because these people know the truth, but they won't say it. So how come a people who know these things about Africans will come out with these narratives and say, you people, just emerged? And I'm saying that we are the first, and we are in the first world, not the third world, and we don't accept that narrative. You see, but just that was just to build on the foundation that,
Mm.
as far as standards in the world were concerned, we set the standards initially. We had organized societies that regulated marriage, that introduced advanced forms of agriculture, medicine, writing, what have you. We introduced these things, you see. So, what happened in between then and the coming of the colonialists with a new system? And that's where the problem began, is when we accepted to go along with the ideologies of the world, run a democracy, or become a nation state, and adopt a system of governance that was alien to us, we were bound to run into problems. You see, and I'm not trying to make excuses for that, but
Right.
the standards, issue of the standards began to emerge with issues such as classism. You know, people, some Africans, and they still do, by the way, they think of themselves as being superior to others. It's a class situation. So these Africans that think of themselves as being better, if you put them in leadership positions, and usually they are the ones that end up there, they don't have a problem if their other African brothers and sisters are not getting their fair share of whatever development is coming into Africa. They don't really give a damn. They don't. And that's how come these substandard, mediocre systems came into being, and such downgrading words, as it's African. Anything goes. You see, that's how come these things came into being. But uh, the crux of what I'm trying to say is there is no African way.
Mm-hmm.
You see, it's either you do it the way the whole world is doing. Let's say you're building a computer. If you're really serious about building a computer, then it has to be able to compete with any computer anywhere in the world, right? But to create the impression that if it's coming from Africa, uh, it really doesn't matter, and
Mm.
that it's to be expected that products coming from Africa are, they're inferior in quality.
Mm.
This is very disturbing. It's very disturbing when you come to Africa and you see the attitude of some African elites toward African products, such as Kantanka.
Right. We talked
Kantanka,
about we talked about this before. But go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, such as Kantanka. There's no reason why you should have a man, and that's not the only thing he's doing, by the way. He's
Hey,
producing a
listen,
lot of electric.
I've heard that he has a TV that if you clap, it'll turn on and cut off.
Definitely, I've seen him demonstrate that. Definitely, the man has a talent, and he seems to be able to replicate. Always, this is a man that never went to school.
Wow.
Again, yeah, again, proving that it's not about getting formal education. If you tap into your inner talents, you can produce something, good in the world. So it's not always about having a structured, system. But anyways, he's producing a lot of things, and he has demonstrated the potential to keep doing this, and he's not getting the support, right? The last time I checked, there was a proposal for all the members of parliament in Ghana to use one of his cars, and the government was gonna buy a car for each of them, and I think there was an agreement to deduct it from some sort of allowance, some financial arrangement, and they refused.
Wow.
Yes, why? Because there is the narrative. Have you seen a Tata car from India?
I've
They have these
Libya. I have not. I have not. In fact, I might have, but go ahead.
from India. It's from India.
I have not. No, I have not.
It's TATA. It's an Indian car.
Okay, I could look it up. Let me look it up real quick.
Yeah, but cantata. If you look at cantatas, I'm not trying to be disingenuous
Hmm.
about Tata, but this is a company that started from India, and it started from humble beginnings. And trust me, the some Tata cars are being used here. I think some of them are still around, pickups by the police, and they sound terrible. I
Hmm.
mean, not to give bad rep about Tata, because they've improved a lot since then. The last time I checked, they entered into partnership with Toyota, I think, or one of those companies,
But
and and
they
and
said
they
just they're saying just last year they grew 45%. So they're doing very well.
yeah. So how do you think that they did it? They had support from their government.
Right. They're subsidized by the government.
Yeah, they had. Look, governments have to come in and play all manner of acrobatics to save, or I wouldn't even say use the word save, but to encourage local industries to grow
Right.
and
Mhm.
become global brands. But how
Just
come?
about every foreign airline is heavily subsidized as well.
Yeah, definitely. So when you have these talents emerging in Africa, and the gravitation of people toward their products is that it's African. uh I don't know what the quality will be and so on. This is again, the chickens coming home to roost, a result of the narrative that has been sent into the consciousness of the people to really look at our own products twice and cast some doubts over them. But
Mhm.
if the same product, I've tried this before, you can bring a product out of your bag, you know, and tell somebody, this is made in Germany. The person will look at it and say, wow, it's a nice product. You go to another person, you show the same product to a Ghanaian or African and say, this
Mhm.
is made in Ghana. The person will be like, oh, okay,
Wow.
and they'll scrutinize the Ghanaian one more than they'll scrutinize the one from Germany or wherever.
Oh, sure.
Why?
Even scrutinize the Ghanaian one more than they would scrutinize the one from China as well.
More. But people forget that most of the companies that we claim are doing so well today, their products were not really good when they started. They had a lot of problems, but people still went along with them.
Correct.
People went along with a lot of things, and people are still doing so. And the government has a role to play because it can control the market in a way that favors the goods that are produced locally. So this idea of you know having substandard, especially man-made goods. Usually, if it's natural, Africa is still considered because we export a lot of food, you know, around the world. But if it's produced by human intelligence, then there's a huge question mark that is put on it because of the narrative that has been put out there and drilled into our heads. And we must refuse it. We must flush it out of our brains because if we don't, we're going to just be going in circles, not being
Hmm.
able to come again out of the maze because it puts you in a maze and you don't really think highly of yourself.
Right.
When you're in that frame of thought, you don't think highly of yourself. You don't really strive to do what your intelligence, your higher intelligence is driving you to do. You doubt yourself. Always you're doubting yourself. You don't have the confidence to even talk to people about your ideas,
Right.
you see. And so all of this mentality, if you box it into a person, you push it into a person's conscience, you have destroyed the person. Person is going to love you forever and love what you
Hmm.
bring. As in, I'm talking about, you know, alien. They love what everybody brings except that of their own, because a shadow has been cast on it to make it look inferior. And I don't know what the basis for that is. It is true that in the new world order, the new world systems of governance and economics and what have you, uh, uh, we have a lot of catching up to do. But it does not mean that it or presuppose that uh, we were delinquent. That is why we are lagging behind. Remember, America is over 400 years old, and America had civil wars too, right?
Right.
And
Correct.
their own struggle and what have you. And so sometimes it's a bit unfair to judge Africa of a fairly young continent in terms of the new world order. It's fairly young, but we could do a lot better. We can make strides in whatever we do, but we under no circumstances should we accept the fact that anything coming from us is supposed to be inferior. That's a defeating mindset, and it should not never be promoted or even mentioned anywhere. I've heard it so many times. I'm sick and tired of it, and I call people out on some of the issues they raise and say, is because it's Africa. You know,
Mm.
uh,
Hey, brother Baba,
you go.
can we ask some
Hmm.
questions? Or but when you
Yeah,
finish, we got a couple questions in the chat room.
Yeah, this sort of discussion is not, I don't want to take it point for point, but let me just wrap up
Go
what
ahead.
I'm trying to say is if you come from a village,
Hmm.
and that village just came out of, I think even using a village is wrong, because a lot of people are also under the impression that Africa, but we had our cities. Africa had cities. If you come from a culture, and that culture has had a lot of struggles, and yet the culture has shown resilience. That's one thing nobody can take from Africa: resilience. The culture has
Hmm.
shown resilience, and it has emerged at a time that there's a whole new system that is running in the world, a system that was not invented by the culture. We didn't invent this. It's not ours. That's why part of the problem is because some of the ideas are so alien and sometimes diametrically opposed to African culture, there is a problem. You see? But to say that because we just emerged in this new system, we have to take a back seat or an inferior seat, and agree to terms such as third world, that's a big no for me. I'm not in any third world, and
Mm.
I'm never going to accept that term, third world, because you have to have a criteria for classifying somebody as a third world person, and using my criteria and other people use it too. We are the first world.
Right.
Mhm.
A quick question, Awini. Since we're speaking on the African standard and how low, I guess, the bar has been set for us, let's
Mhm.
speak on the situation that's going on in South Africa right now. You had many
Mhm.
people saying that if South Africans gain their land back, they're going to end up like Zimbabwe. You have many people saying that if Black Americans work hand in hand with Africa, that it won't work because of what happened in Liberia. What would be your response or rebuttal to statements like that?
Yeah. About Liberia, you see, sometimes it's important to, when something happens, it's important to do a thorough analysis of the circumstances that led to the issue in Liberia. Remember Sierra Leone and Liberia, similar situations. I don't really think that that would have been an issue. Look, I'll give people want to always give the negatives, but I'll give you an
Right.
example.
Go ahead.
Ghana did so well. Ghana did so well in the fight for independence because we had W.E.B. Du Bois, we had Padmore,
Mm,
and others. That, the inspiration of Marcus Garvey, you know,
mm.
and what have you. All of these came together to prop up the mind, because everything is the mind. So there's a certain mindset about Ghana that is, it really did have that intellectual, push, see,
Right.
that was needed. And so to create the impression, and that's again, those who are pushing that agenda, you have to watch them carefully. I don't know what they're talking about. Uh, you know, Liberia, as in a country, because a lot of diaspora Africans came back home, but the problem was with the integration. That's where I think the problem really was. The problem of integration was not handled well, because automatically, if you have that amount of people that are better trained, let's be fair about this, They
Go ahead.
expose more as far as the new systems in the world, are concerned. Because it's things have changed a lot. So they came better prepared, and equipped and everything. And I think that the integration issue was not, worked out properly. But it doesn't mean, that I put petrol in it. Uh, it doesn't mean that we can't have success in integration. Sierra Leone is not doing badly. Even now, with the wounds healing in Liberia, there is coexistence. There
Right.
is. So people should, bury the hatchet and stop, uh, you know, propagating or only seeing negativity, because some people only choose to see negative things happen because they are not happy when positive things happen.
Mm.
They always choose, they go into a situation and they want to choose, especially when it has to do with Africa diaspora relations. There's always, I don't know which invisible man exists there, but there's invisible voice is sending down this dangerous message that Africans in the diaspora and Africans in Africa cannot get along. But I've met so many diaspora Africans in my lifetime, and we have gotten along very well.
Mm.
You know, uh, so I don't know what the issue is. Now, South Africa, with regard to getting the land back, I mean, I've been following it, for the last couple of days because the new president, Cyril Ramaphosa, is also for the idea, even though the one that made a lot of noise about it was Julius Malema.
Right. Love
You
Julius
see,
Malema.
so the idea is is we really did not need to come to this point to force the land issue, to force it.
Right.
I expected the people who unfairly dispossessed South Africans, indigenous South Africans, would have had some dignity and
Right.
said, "Look, this was unfair. Let's see what we could do about it." But these people insist that the land is theirs, and you should go on YouTube and see the titles that are being put uh, on videos regarding this land issue recently in South Africa. People will say blacks. They say South African blacks want to steal white land, and
Oh,
I'm like, no.
no.
You should look at the titles. Just take a cursory look at the titles.
Actually doing
This
it right now.
again, then you see it's a propaganda going on. You see, let's not be try to equalize things, but blacks were driven out of Spain.
Mm.
Nobody mentions
Right. The
that.
Moors. The Moors.
Yeah, exactly. They were driven out of Spain. And people will say, well, that's far back and, let's forget about it and all be friends. But the past shapes the present and the future ultimately. So the issue of land is an issue that has been lingering for a very long time. Those who are benefiting from the status quo do not want to talk about it because it will mean that they will lose something, right? And
Hmm.
sometimes it's amazing when you listen to people who descendants of colonizers, you know, who are still benefiting from robbery and thievery of their ancestors, and yet they tell you, we're all one and let's all be happy. We'll
Right.
only be happy if you give back what was stolen, then we know that you really mean business. But if you keep it and keep talking rhetoric, then we know that you also want to benefit from the wrongs that your ancestors committed against other people, indigenous people, and yet you don't want to take responsibility for it. But you want to keep the car that your father stole
Stolen.
from
Yeah,
the
stole the
next
car.
man,
Exactly.
from the next hijacking and stole it. You want to keep it and still be friends with that man. It's not going to happen. First, you give back the car, and then you apologize.
Right.
That's what is done. So it really did not need to get to this point. You see, it really didn't. You see, and so if you stretch it and you go to Australia, when Europeans got there, it was black people there also. Recently,
Hmm.
there was a documentary about, you know, the government of Australia admitting that it is killing indigenous Australians, and uh, they were supposedly apologizing for it. I don't know what that means because you've already done it, you know. And as far as some of us know, there are deliberate attempts to depopulate the indigenous community of Australia as we speak. And a lot of children were kidnapped to God knows where, and they're trying to bleach the color black out of the Australians, indigenous blacks in Australia. As
Right. Hmm.
this issue of whether it becomes like Zimbabwe is inconsequential. It doesn't really matter. Why? Because if you have a house and you have 3 rooms and you're using only one, and I come and I bust in and I take the
Right.
two. I take
Right.
the
Right.
two and
Right.
I
And,
tell
and then use the excuse, well, you weren't using it.
that's inconsequential. That's not even part of the
Right.
discussion at all. You see, uh, other African countries have to also face the facts that we're on our own. You see, Africans need to grow up and stop
Right.
wanting a babysitter or wanting some other people to come and do our work for us. There's no excuse, no reason why Africans in Zimbabwe and South Africa and other parts of Africa cannot mass produce their own food in this day and age.
Exactly.
Absolute excuse. You mean to tell me you can't run a farm? People will say,
Exactly.
yeah, they can't do. So that's again because we accept the narratives. You see, people forget that the early African liberation fighters, such as Nkrumah and others, they set the standard. People don't want to talk about that. You see, because to talk about that and I forgot to mention what's his name, Thomas Sankara.
Yes.
People don't want to talk about how these leaders were incorruptible. Africa, we didn't start off this way. We did not start off with all these corrupt politicians. We didn't. Our early, and that's why some of us are hopeful that it will return to what it was because it is totally
Let me ask
abnormal.
you this, Awini. What do you think is going to take for it to return? I mean, what do you think it's going to take for us to have another leader like Thomas Sankara or Patrice Lumumba?
For now, I keep saying that the time for single leadership has ended. Yes, we may have some figures that are instrumental in creating an enduring system. Uh, we may have that, but we need a system, not personality cult. You see, so to get that system, and I think it's already ongoing. Awareness is increasing. Awareness is important. People are becoming more conscious of their situation. People are beginning to connect the dots and say this is a cause effect sort of relationship, in what I'm facing. So obviously, uh, the wind is blowing. It's not blowing strong enough, but it's blowing because people do not have a choice but to wake up because they're faced with all of these challenges that they must begin to question themselves. Why is it that you find Africans drowning trying to get to Spain. Why is
Exactly.
it? Why is it that we have all of these, terrible things happen in Africa? People, embezzle billions of dollars or whatever currency the country is using, and they get an award. you know,
Mm.
they get an award when they leave office. They're not asked to return the money. People are what the youth are watching, and to think that the youth are stupid is is preposterous. You see, so the situation is what is going to cause the next stage of our emancipation, which hopefully is economic freedom. Because if you don't have economic freedom, you're not free. You're not free because all of these leaders, people talking about, you can't run it. Look what happened to Zimbabwe. They forgot to mention the sanctions that were placed on
The,
Zimbabwe
the, the,
to
the,
make.
sa- so you have the sanctions. You have the fact that other African countries weren't really helping Zimbabwe. You have a lot. You there? Awini. Blaine, thank you for the super chat. Awini, you there? Okay, hopefully the brother hops back on. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. I'm glad. I'm hoping you guys are uh, enjoying this program. Make sure you guys go to search for Uhuru on Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, and Facebook. Also, make sure you go to dynastymirror.com, go to search for Uhuru.com, and go to Amazon.com. Search your name, Dynasty Mirror. Please buy a book. Again, I hope you guys are enjoying the show and enjoying the jewels that Brother Baba is dropping this evening. Everybody, thank you so much for um, supporting us. I am at now 11,000 subscribers. And if it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't be there. And I want to continue to grow this platform and not only grow it, I want to make sure that you guys continue to find the value in this platform. So again, your support means a whole lot. And we're going to continue to grow this and reach more people. Because, I mean, information like this, like what Awini's giving you guys right now, you're not going to find anywhere else. You're not going to find a platform where you have the diaspora in Africa actually dialoguing and being constructive and coming up with solutions. I mean, you're not going to find a platform like this. So this platform is definitely unique in itself. So again, guys, thank you so much for supporting us. Hopefully, brother Awini hops back on. Awini, you with us? Just give him like 10, 15 more minutes. About 10, 15 more minutes to see if he hops back on. Yeah, I mean, definitely want to be Cobb. I want to ensure that I'm consistent and coming on, you know. So being consistent is key. I definitely want to travel back to Africa more and document more as well. So yeah. Again, thank you for showing up. And thank you, and I'm glad that you guys are enjoying the content. Thank you. Thank you, Patty. I'm glad you see the value in it. Blaine, thank you for the super chat. And again, if you guys aren't super chatting, all I ask is that you share and like the videos. Please share.
Yeah.
Okay, you're back. Okay, perfect. Go ahead.
Yeah, I cut briefly. So to wrap it up with that question about South Africa not becoming like Zimbabwe, uh, Zimbabwe was under a lot of economic sanctions. Nobody wants to talk about those circumstances, but they'll hammer on the fact that it was being run by blacks.
Mm-hmm.
So it appears to me that we are again being unfairly, attacked as the people who cannot run anything and run it well. But I maintain that Africa has been set up to fail. It has been set up by imperialist powers to fail because the early African leaders that had the education and had the good hearts to place Africa where it really ought to be were taken out. They were killed one after the other, coup plots,
Right.
assassinations, and what have you. And after that, stooges, sellouts were put in place,
Yeah, and when the Stooges are put in
mostly
place,
across
it's
the
easier to exploit it. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah. So what happens when you put a stooge in place? His role is not to work for Africa. His role is to work for his paymaster, his
Exactly.
master who put him there. And so, as a result, you will see a lot of things go wrong, and
Mhm.
nothing good seems to be coming out because Africa has been set up to fail.
Hmm.
Because if Africa should rise up, then the world can no longer be getting resources at
Exactly.
the rate at which they're getting,
Pennies.
and there are going to be problems. So we have to come together and work together. You see, try to trade among ourselves rather than always looking outside.
Somebody has a
Is
question in the chat room. They want to know if can you explain how Africa can become a country united as one? Like, what will it take?
what?
The question is, can Africa become united as one? What will it take?
Yeah, it can. Gradually, I think we're getting there. Of course, some of us would have wished it would happen as a matter of urgency, rather than a matter of what you call circumstances. Because the ball has been set rolling already. There is the AU. It's just not functioning the way it should function yet, but the structures are there. We have regional blocks. So you have the West African bloc, you have the East African bloc, you have the North African bloc, you have the Central African bloc, and you have the South African bloc.
Hmm.
So, at, so it's easier to merge these, five or so blocks as you move along. Of course, integration is something that takes time to really fashion out the technicalities. You'll notice that the issue of Brexit, Britain does not want to be in the EU. You know, these are and the issue of Catalonia and all of these are issues that are realistic that will emerge. But what is going to take right now is a matter of circumstance. And if there's also good and forward thinking leadership, leaders who put their money where their mouth is, then maybe we'll see something like that. But at this point, I, I strongly believe that uh, it's going to have to come as a result of the worsening, circumstances, especially with regard to trade among ourselves, with regards to industrial growth, with regards to jobs and what have you. So obviously, it's the only way that we can work with ourselves first, because when you begin to wake up and shake up the power structures in the world, they are going to respond, and they are going to respond by trying to restrict your trade and trying to make life uncomfortable for you.
Right.
But if you have a strong continent that is able to grow from within, then
Hmm.
you're not that susceptible to external shocks.
Mm.
You see. Yeah.
All right. Let's see if we have any more questions in the chat room. Let's see here. See here. So Pro Services says, bottom line, Africa is still enslaved until we cut ties completely with the white man that is sabotaging us. What are your thoughts on that?
still completely enslaved. I don't really want to go that tangent and say it's still completely. We have to give ourselves a pat on the back and say we have set the ball rolling and laid the foundations for our children to do better,
Hmm.
you know and so I wouldn't say, like we are speaking, on a certain level, but if you go like individually,
Hmm.
there are some presidents in Ghana, in Africa, that they may be a bit compromised, but they won't compromise on everything. They're not maybe completely compromised, if you get me. Some of them
Right.
also have their hands tied by previous regimes that have gone to the IMF, gone to the World Bank. So you inherit an economy, for instance, that is indebted to the World Bank. What do? You have to pay. If you don't, you get taken to international courts and you're forced to pay. If you don't pay, they'll attach your property and they'll sell it to defray the cost. So
Right.
these are some of the realities. I would think that the Tanzanian president is a shining example of
Right.
how far we can stretch this issue of making the system work, because there are little practical things that can be done to make the system work. And so maybe Rwanda, people attack Paul Kagame and accuse him of so many things because Rwanda, from what I read, is supposed to be a French colony, whatever, but it's turning into English now,
Mm.
and they're asking for a lot of English teachers to go over there and teach, and so there are a few. It's not a lost cause, or it's not completely. You remember that Africa was not totally colonized. If you look at it
Hmm.
critically, there's a reason. I believe there's a reason for that. That it represents hope. You see, it's not a lost cause. It's not. It's not lost at all. But what we're saying is the rate at which we are growing, because the population is growing, and the strain that puts on the government to do things for the citizenry. You see, it's not matching the rate at which the economies are growing. So there will be problems. You see, but I wouldn't say that Africa is completely. There are still a few good leaders. Some of them good leaders in the making. Out there. You've been to Namibia,
Yeah.
right?
I mean,
I
I
mean,
have. I have. Yes.
Botswana.
I've
There's
been to
still a
Botswana.
few countries
I've
that.
been. I've been to Namibia. Namibia is an absolutely beautiful country. But what I noticed in
Mhm,
Namibia, a lot of the I guess white South Africans who fled, we'll just go ahead and say fled, or left South Africa post apartheid ended. They're now in Namibia.
definitely a mix of people over there. But again, we should take note that we have produced a lot of uh, hard-working, forward-thinking Africans in that country as well. Uh, so there is cause to be hopeful.
Mm.
There is cause to be hopeful. It's just that there are specific policy decisions that are not being made, because if you don't make a policy decision that strengthens your economy, you undermine it. So it's either you work for yourself or you work against yourself. And some of our policies are working against us currently. You see, there's no reason why we shouldn't be focusing on the African as in a commercial industry of production.
Mm.
And there's no reason why it shouldn't be done. Africa is a huge continent with so much potential, a lot of idle youth. Why are we being bombarded with all of these negative narratives about Africa? And to the point where Africa next thing they associate it with is negativity, because some of them, a lot of them don't know the history. Some of us know our history, and even when some of our brothers and sisters got carried to the diaspora, the African ingenuity still thrived in America.
Mm,
Elijah
true.
McCoy, Benjamin Banneker,
Mm.
all of these people reasserting the point that even oppression we could produce. So some of the policies are not really helping us, and it's going to change. It's definitely going to change. I think definitely there's going to have to be a spark, something that a spark, like people associate with the Arab Spring and all of that. I don't know what that was about, but if we want to build an economy that is sustainable, then we have to look to ourselves, as our early leaders have encouraged us to do. You can borrow, but you borrow wisely and you invest wisely, and then you make profit out of it. But to really try to see if this can sink in is, we must abandon totally and refuse to accept the position that you know the African standard is a substandard of what is being offered on the global front across all sectors. You see, we must refuse that. And if we do, then we will, it will give us a sense of pride to strive for equality in terms of production. And it will mean that we want to add more value to our products. It will mean that we want to produce, at the highest level, at, or to
Hey, go ahead. We need to have
Mhm.
one. Then I have well that okay. Finish your statement. Then I have one final question for you, and then we'll close out. But go ahead.
Mhm. Yeah. So there's no reason why we should allow anybody to demean us and tell us things that he or she does not even know what they're talking about. And it's only when we accept these things that we put ourselves in a maze where it's difficult to get out. Really, really difficult. Sometimes you try to have conversations with people here, about the practical things that can be done, and how we could build and so on, and people just, some people just don't have the confidence. You see, and confidence is really important. If you don't have confidence, you can't do anything.
Okay, let me ask this final question in regards.
Mhm,
Let's speak on religion.
mhm,
Let's speak on religion and
mhm,
its African standard. Can
mhm.
we build or create this African standard, still relying on Western, or still while we still practice, many of us still practice Western religion?
Yeah, so like I said, I keep referring to the position of Professor Clark because I am a follower of Professor Clark on this. Any religion can work for us if we make it work for us. If we, or if anybody belongs to a religion, and the religion does not become a tool for his or her personal liberation, even physically and spiritually, then the person is in the wrong religion. So if we keep this in mind, then it's obviously, it doesn't really matter what you believe. I'll give you, most of our early African leaders belong to one religion or the other, but they coexisted because they had an understanding of what it is that we are trying to achieve. It
Mhm.
is not my concern what you believe in, even though, of course, it will be more convenient if we all believe in the same thing. And Yet, amidst all the fight for rights, African religion has no rights. People could come to Africa and talk about human rights and all of these rights, except for African traditional religion,
Right.
which is our original religion
Mm.
and it's still alive. The ideas have influenced religions all over. People don't want to admit this. I will point them to read books. Read Albert Churchward's book, Arcana of Freemasonry. Read Albert Churchward's Science and Symbols of Primordial Man. Read Gerald Massey's Egypt, Light of the World. People
Mm.
show you, these researchers show you that we had the original religion.
Mm.
And sadly now, we live in a country, in a continent where we put that on the back burner and we prop up somebody else's, you know, religion, which is, of course, if it works for you, then you deal with it. But if we can go by how our early African leaders got along, for instance, Nkrumah was not a Muslim,
Right.
right? Kwame Nkrumah was not a Muslim. He associated with Muslim leaders very well. They bonded really well. He was close with. He even brought Kwame Nkrumah brought the great Senegalese Sufi Sheikh Amadou, not Amadou Bamba,
Well,
the
yeah,
other one.
Abdul Bamba was already long gone before Thomas
Not
Sankara came on.
yeah. This man, the Ibrahim Enyas, the one that belonged to the Tijaniya sect.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know much about Tijani, even though
Yeah.
Tijani pretty much split from from the Murids, from Muridism, but
Mm,
I don't know much about Tijani.
mm.
But go ahead.
Yeah, but he brought him here and he was instrumental in the creation of the Volta Lake,
Mm.
because there were some spiritual forces in the lake that had to be dealt with. People don't want to deal with that. He got along with everybody, and we were able to work on the basis of the fact that we are all Africans. And when people see you in the world, they don't see a Muslim or Christian; they see an African
A black
first.
man, right?
You
Right.
know, you can fool yourself that you're an Arab, or you're an Arab wannabe, or European wannabe,
Right.
or Indian wannabe. You're an African. So once you accept that fact, then you have a basis to work together. That's all that we need. You see, and for people to also stop the discrimination against other religions, because everybody discriminates against African traditional religion.
Right.
Everybody, which is unfair.
Right. No, you're correct. All right, brother. I'll let you go
Yeah,
ahead and well, you can finish your statement, then I'll let you go ahead and close out. But there's see the thing. There's one more question someone wants to ask, but I have to go to my son's grandmother. It's her birth.
mm,
We're having a little birthday party for her. But forget it. Okay. I'm gonna ask one more question, Awini.
mhm.
Are we prepared? Let me find it. It's in regards to. Hold on. Let me scroll back up. This is a good question. Um, let's see here. In terms of logistics and weaponry, we are at a tremendous disadvantage. So, what do you think what do you think it will take for us to liberate ourselves from foreign invasion?
Well, you see, it's a relevant question because security, even now, is a problem. It's becoming a problem because from the Middle East, going down through Somalia, even parts of Kenya, even Ethiopia, coming here, Egypt, and what have you. There are these security problems. Again, I lament the inability of the AU to permanently have a force, that is strong enough to ward off, invasions. unwanted invasions. Again, the problem is that the AU is not really functioning as it's supposed to function. Because if it were,
Awini. Hopefully the brother comes back so he can finish the question. Finish answering the question. Again, everybody, thank you so much for coming on and joining us. It means a lot. It really does. Again, this platform is growing, and I want to be the go-to when it comes to diaspora and African relations. So again, everybody, thank you so much for coming on. Content, when he comes back on, I'm gonna have him finish answering the question, and then we can you get to get it. I'll make sure he'll share all his contact information with you. Content, is this the first time you ever heard Awini speak? I know, Content, you've been on the live streams for a minute. So his if you look in, if just in case he doesn't come back, if you look on one of the other streams we've done, his contact information is in there. Salva, thank you for the super chat, brother. All right, let's give him a couple more minutes, guys, and then we're gonna have to go ahead and check out. Again, thank you for coming on, everybody. Give him a few minutes to respond. I know that connection can be shaky sometimes. But guys, all I ask, if you're not super chatting, please share the page with everybody on your Facebook via Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Please share the information with everybody if you could. That would be so kind of you all. Again, if you find value in this platform. All right, I'm gonna wait one more minute, and then we're gonna go ahead and wrap up. Again, search for Huru, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, and Facebook. Also, make sure you go to search for Huru.com, go to dynasamir.com, make sure you go to Amazon.com and search your name, Dynasamir. Bob, what's going on? All right, family, we're gonna go ahead and check out. Again, thank you for coming on. Sava, sorry about that he couldn't finish answering your question. He got disconnected or cut off with the Wi-Fi, I guess. So I will make sure he answers your question though when we do another broadcast. So do me a favor, make sure, brother, that you email me your question again. Make sure you Okay, hey, Awini, real quick, if you could give us the abbreviated version of that answer.
relating to
The military.
Yeah, we definitely. I think the AU should, have more power than it has right now. And the only way it can have more power is if the heads of state prioritize security as a threat to our existence. Period.
Mm-hmm.
And once it's classified as a threat to our existence, then we will place enough priority on it to put aside a portion of our national budgets to fund, military operations.
Perfect. All right, brother. If you could please give everybody your contact information so people who are interested in reaching out to you, they can.
Yeah, you can reach me on awinibaba at gmail.com. You can also reach me on +233 249 831 251. That's +233 249-831-251. Yeah, it's good if we are able to keep this momentum
Absolutely.
going. The dialogue is good. I really didn't expect to stay this long, but it's been good. It's been good.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So thanks again for having me, and thank everybody for participating.
Yes, sir. Again, thank you everybody for coming on. We appreciate it, Brother Baba. Thank you so much. Guys, we'll be back on soon. Till next time, Dynasty Mirror, search for Huru. Peace.